First of all, good evening.
Oh, there's a lot of.
Yes, there's a lot of Zoom. And of course, just to give you a heads up a little bit, I had a lot of consideration. We were supposed to start this last week, actually 2 weeks ago. And then, of course, this major world tragedy just dropped upon us, kind of disturbed everything that was going on. Nobody was really busy at scheduling anything except things that were relevant for the holiday, or for Israel. So, but I felt that part of the process of helping Israel, we're working so hard for people to elevate themselves spiritually, which talks to the core of what's going on now. And for us not to study Torah because of Israel, it would be the wrong thing to do. So I know not everybody's on here. I see the list here. And I think most of the people said that they would not be there tonight, but are following along with our learning program. Let me tell you a little bit about this program just briefly. This is primarily directed to shul leadership. And the reason being that our objective in the shul is not to create an institution. It's not to create a building. It's not to create just an environment that would answer to the social and communal needs in that way, but really a lighthouse that elevates us to another level, which speaks to the core of what's going on in the world today. Just not part of the subject, but just as a preface. I mentioned it last night. The world today, we are in an existential moment of our existence. It's called like a turning point, tipping point, a very critical moment. And what goes on in the world today goes on among Jews today. Yesterday we had this conversation, and those who were there, I don't want to repeat myself, but the objective of what we talk about in terms of what happened here last Saturday, etc., is completely misread and misinterpreted. Because what happened this last Saturday is only a reason for anti-Semitism for the last 5% of history, for the last 55 years, because Hamas didn't grow up until the middle of the 1960s, more formally 70s and 80s. So we talk about anti-Semitism in this period of time, and I understand 100% has nothing to do with Israel, has nothing to do with land, has nothing to do with occupation, has nothing to do with being settlers, nothing to do with apartheid, nothing to do with anything like that. Because if that was the reason, you can't answer why there was anti-Semitism for 2,000 years before that. There was no land, no power. Jews were shtetls. They didn't know who they were. They barely made a living. A little shoemaker sitting on wooden benches and studying Torah, and raising their children. And in the backwoods, being afraid that maybe some pogrom would knock their city out of existence like it did in 1650, when over 10,000 Jewish villages were plundered and completely eradicated by Bogdan Khmelnytsky, a Ukrainian, by the way. So it doesn't answer what happened. What happened is just a manifestation of what happened today. It was the excuse for the 21st century. It was a post-Holocaust excuse. You couldn't really hate Jews after the Holocaust. You just murdered 7 million of them. So it would be kind of not politically correct to hate them. So you had to find some reason. So Zionism was a good camouflage, for hating Jews or anything else, because if Zionism wasn't there, there was something else there. Because in Poland, there was no Zionism. And in Rome, there was no Zionism. And in Babylon, there was no Zionism. And in Spain, there was no Zionism, etc., etc., etc. So what is the core? That's what we talk about. What is the core? What's going on here that comes to talk to us on a different level, which most people don't know? I ask every bar mitzvah young man that becomes bar mitzvah, which probably at this point in my career has to be at least 1,900. I mean, a lot of people, A lot of kids, a lot of bar mitzvahs, a lot of different families. Bar mitzvahs from kids who have long payas and their fathers are completely Hasidic, to kids that don't even know what the different shape of an aleph and a beis. They don't know, but they all get bar mitzvah. I always ask them the same question. I ask them 3 questions, but the one question that's most common is, why are you a Jew? What makes you a Jew? And usually they fumble a little. Most of the kids know, well, my parents are Jewish. I said, yes, you're right. That qualifies you to be a Jew. But why are you a Jew? Why are your parents a Jew? Who made you a Jew? What is this, just a label? So all of a sudden they come up and I say, I want to be a Jew. You know, in prison, you can be a Jew no matter what you are. If you tell the chaplain I'm a Jew, you could be a black Muslim, post-Christian, post-Mormon, etc. Walk around with 6 crosses, and you say, I'm a Jew, and you got to write down Jew. And you got to give them kosher food, etc. Because that's just a statistic. They have no measurement. There are no standards. But in reality, you ask yourself the question, logical parents of children. I heard today a professor who said, I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. But he was screaming and yelling that he doesn't trust the schools because he's got 2 little kids. He can't trust it. So everybody saw that video, right? So he's asking me the question, if you're so scared about your children, you're worried about your life, I got an easy out for you. Just say, I'm not a Jew. Because the only reason you say, I don't know why are you a Jew? You don't believe in God. So take God out of the equation. If you take God out of the equation, what makes you a Jew? What, you're born differently? You're born with a little mark on your tushy? What makes you a Jew? Some crown royal stamp, like they used to think that the people in the royal families were born with a little purple crown on their little butt. What makes you a Jew? Just the word, the label. I'm a Jew. Not a Jew. Most Jews don't know why they're Jews. They're just Jews. It's very important to know why. Because you don't know why, you lose a passion. You have the essence, but you lose the passion. And you lose the passion. You look at Jewishness as a burden, not as a gift. Most Jews today who are worried about anti-Semitism look at Jewishness as a burden. Why? They told me, what the country club, they say, I'm Jewish, you know. Do they know why? What do they know? What they don't know? No. They're filled with this uncomfortable inner anxiety of this Jew. Well, why are you a Jew? You look the same. You got 2 eyes and nose. You look exactly the same. As I've said many times, you know, when I was going through in the early days, you know, they wanted to do a transplant on me. You know, this is many years ago. Talked about what kind of a valve, what kind of a heart you get. So I was talking to some of the physicians. He said, you know, what kind of person would you have any kind of a choice on the kind of a heart that you would take? And I said, definitely. He says, I'm sure you would want a heart from some really smart sage that knows a lot of stuff, is really pure. I said, you're wrong. I want a heart from some 26-year-old muscle man, truck driver, who unfortunately got killed in a car accident. That guy's heart I want. Does he have to be Jewish? I said, no, he just has to have a heart. So if that's the case, why am I Jew? Why are you a Jew? His child, that's why am I Jew? A little girl asked me, mother called me up. She said, what should I tell my daughter? She said, her daughter says to her, Mommy, if they don't like Jews that much, why are we Jewish? Why are we Jewish? She had a good question. The mommy calls me. I said, your daughter just asked you a question about her life. It's a question that you can't say, hey, hold on, honey, let me ask somebody. Because the kid would say, probably the kid who probably was more respectful would have said to them, Mom, don't you know why you're Jewish? You made me Jewish without even knowing why you're Jewish. Would you bestow upon your child something that you don't even know what it's about? Or that's a negative? That he has to walk around with a burden? So what is to be a Jew? So I thought that this year, before this whole thing happened, because this is a common reality in our society. The biggest problem of our society today, single biggest overall problem, not a behavioral pattern that has seeped into our behavior that is really troubling because it's a downward spiral, like instant gratification that everybody has, like entitlement that everybody has. Like today's kids, everybody's entitled. Everybody, if it feels good, do it now, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. All that kind of stuff. Homo Deus, I own my own body. Nobody owns me. Can't tell me what to do. So that's a behavioral pattern. But the key factor in what's going on today is people are ignorant. It's the society with the most access to information and the least intelligence, the least wisdom, not intelligence, wisdom. We're overwhelmed with information. All day is information coming in. You forget the information, half the stuff that comes in, you don't even remember 5 minutes later. And it's irrelevant. But we're addicted to it. Totally addicted to it. The little machine that we have is more addictive than heroin. Really. New studies, you'll watch as they go on. That's great. Why so many kids have ADD and ADHD? Because they're watching 6 games at a time. They're playing 4 games at a time. They're speaking to 6 people at a time. There's no focus. So when your brain is moving around at that kind of speed without focus, all day, because that little machine, it operates at its own speed, and it evokes its own responses. And the way the algorithms work, they grab what you like, and then they keep pumping you at it. It's like they know what your sickness is, and they keep feeding it on to you. And they're brilliant at it. That's how they're making all this money. So we have a very difficult. So I've thought about, we have to come to that conclusion. Most of our children don't know what it is to be a Jew. They think to be a Jew is at 13, you got to go up to the Torah, babble something that you don't even know what you're saying. In most cases, you don't even know what you're reading. You read it by just some English letters, or not even that. And you can't wait until it's over. The minute after Bar Mitzvah, most kids, believe me, I see them and I talk to them because I'm interested in it. Glad that's over. I say, what do you mean it's over? You're just gonna keep coming to school now? Oh, no, not anymore. No, come on. I don't want to do that. Because it's meaningless. It's meaningless. To give you just a little story, one little story. So a young man just committed when I first came here. We're talking about the early 1970s. And I made friends with this family. And this kid got bar mitzvah in Temple Emmanuel. And the parents invited me to come to the bar mitzvah. But I told them I'm not going to come to the bar mitzvah because the synagogue used a microphone. Men and women sit together. It's not a synagogue that's created according to Jewish law. So I said, I can't qualify for that. So I'll wait outside. So after I prayed and finished my prayers in the shul, I walked over to Temple Emmanuel. I'm standing on the porch. And they've got these big steps over there in Emmanuel. And all of a sudden, the father comes out, and the father says, "You should have heard my kid. He was fantastic." Everybody in the synagogue said they never heard of something like that. He knew exactly he had such a beautiful voice. He was singing that Torah. He says, I felt so fantastic. And the father takes out a cigar while he's talking to me. Takes a big fat cigar, lights it up, and he says to his boy with me, and he's like, "Rabbi, you want to come along with us?" I said, "Why? Where are you going?" He said, "We're going to the races. Dog races, horse races, I don't know, but races." So the kid, this little 13-year-old bright kid, that followed his life until he unfortunately died of an overdose 12 years later. So this kid says to his father, "Dad, I just read in the Torah that you talk about that you're not supposed to do this on Shabbos." The kid says, he read the Ten Commandments portion. "We just read that you're not supposed to do this on Shabbos." So the father says to the kid, "Come on, that's the old days. We don't do that anymore. So why'd you make me do it?" The kid says, "So why'd you make me do it?" "Oh, come on, everybody has a bar mitzvah." And I saw this kid was bright. 12 years later, he died because it wasn't true. There was no truth. It was nobody's fault. The father was used to it. So today, a lot of these Jewish people who live like Goyim, do you know that most Jews in America don't live like Jews? They eat like non-Jews. They dress like non-Jews. They behave like, they don't. They're still a Jew. They're as much a Jew as you and me. I'm not saying they're any no less Jew. In fact, they could be a more holy Jew because you don't know what kind of challenges they're going through. Most Jews that come to me, I don't ask them to eat kosher right away. You know why? I don't want them to eat non-kosher on purpose. So I think if I don't tell them, they don't know. But when I tell them to eat kosher, I'll have prepared them already for a long enough time so they'll understand what I'm talking to them about. Just to throw a bunch of laws at them, they look at me like, "You don't know what you're talking about. My rabbi eats it." They told me. And it's true. So what is it to be a Jew? So I thought it was time. Most of us learn the Torah like we do everything else for information. We read the Parsha and we know the story. We read this week's Parsha took place 4,500 years ago. Started about there, ended about 4,200 years ago. Next portion next week that we're going to learn, we read, started about 3,700 years ago, 3,900 years ago. The whole Torah ends 2,500 years ago. All the 5 books takes 2,500 years, roughly. Half of civilization. And we read it as if we're reading some history book. This happened then, you know who this guy was, you know who this guy was. And, there's a lot of details, a lot of names, a lot of facts, a lot of movement. Half the stuff, if I asked you, you wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. Like if I said to you, you know who Odo is? Odo. Do you know who Odo is? How about Sila? You know who Sila is? A lot of Jews don't even know who Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are, but Odo and Sila are in this Torah portion. The 2 critical characters in the play of the universe. We don't know it. Why? Because it's a story. Like nobody knows who who Henry V was, or Louis XV, or Torquemada, or Caesar 1, 2, or 3, or Brutus. You know from a movie in Hollywood, or from a history book that you had to read. Nothing more. Torah tells us that. Torah is life. It would be patently not only unfair, But it would be the wrong thing for God to create such a sophisticated guy like you and me, throw a guy like us take a little sheep. You know what God did to us? It says right there in the Haggadah, he took a little sheep and he threw it into 70 hungry wolves. How fair is that? Take a sheep and throw it into the wolves. And says, take care of yourself. So God doesn't do that. God says, I'm going to put you in the middle of the wolves, and I'm going to give you the power to be able to look at the eye of all those wolves, and they won't touch you. Now you look and say, how does that happen? So if we ask that question 5,700 years ago, or 3,400 years ago at Sinai, or 4,000 years ago when Abraham was born, if we asked that question, it would have been a good question. Because there's no logic to it, no rationality to it. But today we know it's true. How many times did the wolves try to devour us? I promise you, you don't know. Nobody in this room knows. It would take you about an hour just to list the places and times when they tried to eradicate you, murder your children, our children, take away our wives. Do you know that historically, a lot of people from the Spaniard, Portuguese, European environment, lots, not from the Sephardic world, but in the Ashkenazi world, there are many of those ancestry or children are Jewish for real. I've met them. I've met someone they found their mother after mother Jewish. They would thought they were Catholic. Because you know how many kids were ripped away from their parents and stolen in the Middle Ages? In the 1300s and the 1400s? Stolen. Just coming in under the chuppah. How many stories do you read for your little children that we read about our ancestry? When the middle Chmielnicki would come in the middle of a chuppah, grab the bride, and she was gone forever. Somewhere along the line, there was some child born out of her from some savage. And that little child is Jewish. So it happens throughout history that happens to us in such a manner. So Hashem gave us a mechanism. The Torah is so powerful. It is so powerful. We don't look at it that way because we look at it as a book that we have to study and live by. We look at it as rules and laws and authority and discipline. But it's so powerful that the single one physical thing that accompanied the Jew through the impossible journey of our history, it was the Torah. We didn't have a temple. We didn't have a land. We didn't have a language. We didn't have clothing. We had the Torah. There's got to be something about it. And just to discard it and to just make like it doesn't exist. So it's a time when we learn the Torah. I'd like to learn it this time around. We just started the first two Parshas. To look at it, of course, when you read the Torah, and I'm suggesting I have the books here. Now, if you have these at home, don't have them. If you don't have them at home, there's we buy them at wholesale. So I don't know how much it costs. So I don't know how much to pay. We'll let whoever takes one, you let them know. They'll pay for it. The Chumash. This is a Chumash where the Chumash is divided into 7 sections. Saturday we read all 7. So part of the work of this group will be to read one section each day. Sunday till Sheni, Monday to Shlishi. Now, to the extent of how deeply you want to read it to understand it, it's up to you. Some text is easy to go through. A lot of the text requires a little bit of the commentary. Rashi is the best commentary. It's available in English as well here, not. But this English translation of this particular Chumash is a very excellent translation. It also integrates critical parts of the Rashi that give you interpretation of the text. So you get it better. So each day you'll read the text. By the time Thursday comes, you'll have read almost the whole portion. You'll have read till Shishi. Because Thursday's the 5th day, so you'll have read till Shishi, which is almost all Torah portion. So we'll be able to discuss it more deeply. Our objective will be in this discussion. I'm gonna be able. I'll write questions each starting next week. We'll get you a series of questions that you might think about while you're reading it. Our objective will be is, what does this Torah portion mean for me and my children and my family today here in Miami? And not some extrapolation, story of how to behave on the beach. What does it mean in my life? And today, that question is very fundamental. What does it mean to be a Jew? Well, how did God create man? What is radical evil? There's such thing now as radical evil. We saw it. Radical, unconditional evil for no reason, no benefits, no quality. You don't get power. Just evil. Why did God create that? And God had to create it because we know that if God wouldn't create it, it wouldn't be. And anything that exists must have God's energy. That's the reality of life. So why did we create evil? How do we overcome evil? What's our objective? And then, so just to give you an example, I'll do it a few minutes because I want to go to the Tanya part too. I'm going to give you, take a look at the first 2 portions. I'm going to go through Bereshis and Noach because that's what we read. I'm not going to go into it as we would normally do, just to give you an idea of what we're trying to achieve. Bereshis. Look at the portion, not in terms of the detail. Adam was created, Cain killed Abel, Lamech killed Cain, his own grandson, his own grandfather. Lamech had 2 wives, Adon, Zillah. The world got corrupted. Who corrupted the world? The judges, the hierarchy corrupted the world to such a degree that it was total corruption. So if you take a look at the first Torah portion, which is 10 generations, the first book of Bereshit, the first section, Bereshit, from the time of the birth from the creation of man until the birth of Noah, which is the end of the first portion, it's 10 generations, a series of downward spiral corruption. Let me analyze it for a minute. So you see it in its totality. When you read this Torah, look at the whole story, because you're looking at over 1,000 years here, 1,300 years. You're not looking at a day. Usually, the whole first portion is 6 pages. You can't write about 6 pages, 1,300 years of 6 pages. So you only get the main point to see development. We're now talking about development of man, the most sophisticated creature that exists, the only creature that has capacity for free choice thought, that has capacity to control his emotions. Animals can't control the emotions. They have behavioral modification for their emotions. That's why you send dogs to trainers. You can't explain, listen, doggy, I want you to understand. If you sit here nicely, I'm going to do me a favor. The dog knows that if you don't do it, he's not going to feed him. He'll do it. It's all behavioral. But animals. But you see the development of man. And the initial development of man, even though he had a brain, instinctively, he went against his instinct. He went against his brain. He went with his instinct, not his brain. Because you think about what's the first thing that man did? Created man and woman, beautiful, you're the boss of the world. Name all the animals, you own the whole world. You can eat anything you want. But this God, this energy that creates him, he dialogues with him. Says one thing, don't eat the tree, the fruit. That's the only thing. You got a temporary injunction. You got a 3-hour temporary injunction not to eat the fruit. What does Adam do? Eats the fruit. Why? He knows God told him not to. But his emotion, he knows that there's a God watching, because later on he hides. Because he thinks what he doesn't see doesn't exist. So if he can sneak around the backside, his wife is kind of seducing him. The snake's trying to seduce his wife. He's got a little challenge over here. He's got to show his wife he's a man. I'm a man, I'm the man, the snake. He says, so he just does one thing. He doesn't listen. That's it. He doesn't listen. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't eat pig. He just doesn't listen. The key factor in Jewish life is acceptance of authority. It's the one thing that we didn't teach our children. They do what they want. Explain it to me and I'll do it. When my son, when he was a little boy, and he said to me, I told him to do something. And he said, why? You know what my answer was? Because I said so. That's what I said. Today the psychologist would say, how'd you do that to your kid? You're forcing him. Somebody you said, you got to, go explain to a 5-year-old kid why I can't run on the road. Because I said so. Today there's no such thing as I said so. God says, why can't you eat the fruit? Because I said so. And what's the next thing that happens? Once you lose authority, which means you're your own boss, you do what you feel is right. There is no objective right. There's no one that tells you what to do. You're your own boss. So you know what happens next time? You think, well, next time maybe I'll eat another fruit. The next time you kill your brother. Imagine the beginning of creation. God just made this fantastic man, gave him everything in the world. He gave him Bal Harbor and Palm Beach and Las Vegas. He gave him the whole world. Didn't want to listen. Kill your brother. Next thing that happens. From that moment on, the world goes haywire. Haywire. Because the animal is taken over. The animal is instinctive. You can change a person's mind, but you can't change a person's heart. You can only train a person's heart. You can't change a person's heart. You can't make a person love or hate. It's just in a conversation. It takes many years to create the monsters that they created over there. Many years. To have people become so brutal, so savage, so desensitized, so inhuman. Normal people can't do that. Most people can't do that. Even I deal with prison and guys on death row who are serial killers. Serial killers. There is a nation of serial killers. A whole nation of serial killers. That raising serial killers. Monster people, not people. So that development continues. It finally ends up to become more of a civil, because you got the whole world in front of you. Don't kill your brother. You got so much stuff. God confronted you. He says, you killed your brother, you're going to die one day. And Cain's own grandson kills him. Shoots him by mistake in the woods. He thinks he's an animal. Kills him. So he says, it straightens out. So they find politically correct ways, democratically accepted ways. So all of a sudden the Torah tells us a story that's so not part of the development of man, but it's critical in development of man. It tells about Lamech. Lamech was one of the offspring of Adam. Lamech had 2 wives. One was Tzila, and one was Oda. Why did he have 2 wives? Oda was the housewife. She had the kids. She was pregnant every 9 months, every 10 months. She made sure there was food on the table. She made sure the house was taken care of. She made sure she had to raise the kids. Tzila was the trophy wife. She drank some kind of liquid that says that she wasn't able to have children. because he wanted her to be the beauty that this was a fun woman, the one that he went to South Beach with. He had the wife at home that took care of the kids. Then he had the wife that he went to party with. And everybody took it. They all accepted it because he was the boss. Father had no complaints. So why does the Torah tell us that? So he says, let's take a look at what happened after that. So Ada has a son and a daughter. He has more than that, but a son and a daughter that we know about. It's in the text. The son's name, the son becomes the first farmer of the world. A shepherd and farmer. He's shepherding and farming. Productive for society. The daughter, Nama, who later on becomes the wife of Noach, she develops music, develops the flute, string music, musician. Two extraordinary, positive, productive elements. Sila doesn't have children, but God makes her have one child. And that one child, she has another one too, but initially, his name was Tubal Cain. He perfects weapons for murderers to kill. That's what it says. Weapons, rotzkim, not weapons to protect, weapons of murder. Because he's growing up for pleasure only. He has no mission or purpose. His mission and purpose is just to have a good time and to give the other person a good time. Can you imagine women that growing up in our society and they spend hours a day in gyms, they spend hours a day going crazy just for some pleasure with some guy somewhere. A lot of women like that. I'm not talking to you to, this fine society. I mean, I deal with it. Take a look at the television, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's 100% correct. So people look at themselves. So the Torah continues. It says, you have to watch the developmental process. From no discipline, from no acceptance of authority, eventually you get thrown out of the Garden of Eden. Life is not successful. Brothers kill brothers. The world becomes a sand trap for instant gratification and nothing more. And you start having a sense of power, ego, ownership, weaponry, murder. And those goes long. God is not even in the equation. They start serving idols. But there's no direct confrontation with God. Nobody say, you don't exist. He's just not out in their consciousness. So then it says, and the sons of the judges come down. And many young women were born. And they start to really be corrupting. This is what it says in Rashi. You read it. This is not deep interpretations. There was no sense of morality, which means the guy in charge, Nimrod, he's in charge. He's a strong man. He goes outside, he sees a husband and a wife. He likes how she looks. Knocks him off, take her away. Nobody asks questions. That's what you do. You go into a guy's house, you like the way his wife looks, take her out, take her home, do what you want with her. Not only no morality among humans, every man hates every man, no man trusts any man. The whole world is in this state. They even become animalistic to the extent they live with animals. Dogs, with horses, with cows. God says this world has come to the point of no return. There's nothing that I can do. Why? Do you know why? Because they have become so corrupted in their emotion, you can't return them. And then comes Noach. The whole world's destroyed. And then I'm not going to go through it, read it. We'll talk about it next week. At the end of Noach, and the whole world is destroyed, obliterated, nothing left. So you might say people are going to behave after that, right? They know that God destroyed the world. He said he's going to destroy it. He did. The whole world. Tower of Babel. What are you guys really nuts? You just got whacked out. You got knocked out of the world for what you did. You're messing around with the God again. What's going on over here? Again, a societal shift. Because the Tower of Babel was not like the period of Noah. They weren't, you might say, power hungry. They were evil. They were pleasure seekers. These guys, they were philosophers. They built a tower that they're going to confront God himself. We're not depending on this God. One day he'll decide he'll bring us another flood. We're going to shore up the heavens. We're going to make sure we'll turn off the spout. Really? They were against God. They didn't, as far as men were concerned, they all talked the same language. They had a good time together. What happened? A society that says everybody's equal. We own everything. Equality. Critical race theory, critical human theory. Everybody's got everything, and the world hates each other. It doesn't work. When man unifies thinking that he is God, when man unifies as a result and is subservient to God, you're in a safe world. And so, as you read the next portion, and the birth of Abraham the next week, and that pattern, don't read it just for the individual event that's taking place. Look at it in terms of the development, because now what we just saw till now was from the development of man to the development of the Jew. Next week, we start talking about how the Jew gets developed. What is that pattern? We just now saw how the decomposition of the human takes place. So now we want to find out how the composition of the Jew takes place. So read it in such a manner, and we'll go through it again, Mr. Shem, next week. Now, as far as Tanya is concerned, it's also very important. Because as we know, who are we as a Jew? There's the technical side of a Jew. Like, I want to ask you, who are you as an American? So an American, you're a person who lives by the Constitution, lives by the Constitution, lives by the Bill of Rights, lives by law, lives by the culture of America. Now, let's say I'm asking you a question. If someone said to you, I don't believe in the Constitution. In fact, I'll rip up the Constitution. The Constitution means nothing to me. I don't believe in the flag. Burn the flag. I don't believe in the Bill of Rights. Nothing. I'm a revisionist. I don't believe in the whole Constitution of America in 1776. That's a bunch of baloney. My grandparents made America. America started in 1627. What happened? Let's say you come to get a citizenship papers, and the judge will ask him, so when was America done? He says, 1657. What's the American flag? I don't believe in the American flag. I promise you, he's not becoming a citizen. Not becoming a citizen. A Jew? I don't believe in the Torah. I'm an atheist. I have nothing to do with it. Still a Jew. So where does this Jew come from? Of course, there are physical manifestations because we live in a physical world, so there are limits. So a Jew has to have a Jewish mother, or to properly enter into Jewishness and to initiate themselves in Jewish, I call them, to become there's no such thing as a convert. It's a reconstruction of the person, because that's what takes place. It doesn't change from one to another. You get a new soul. That's in Jewishness. So when you're a Jew, when does it start? So the physical manifestation of the Jew starts when you come out of your mother's womb. That's when it starts, that you're a Jew. But you are a Jew a long time before you're born. And that goes to another deep question of understanding ourselves. Who are we? Who are we? When you look into the mirror, who are you? Are you what you see in the mirror? For $100,000 or less, you can make yourself look any way you want. You could even make yourself change your sex any way you want. You can walk in as a young lady and walk out as a young man or an old man or an old lady. Do anything you want today. Who are you? Are you what they advertise? That this is you after 6 years of working out and running 20 miles a day and doing all that stuff, and you look at yourself, look at me. Who are you? Are you your heart? Your mind? Who are you? So we are primarily, each one of us is our soul. Because our soul is the essence of our being. If you want to explain the difference between a body and a soul, the body is like a suit. It's a suit. The tears break. You can break an arm, break a leg, fix an organ. A body's like a suit. To some people, it's like a house. The soul is like the person in the suit. That soul started a long time before you were born. Started before you were born because that soul came into you, not as a seed. That soul didn't start as a protein. That soul started in its fullest force. The body did not have yet the developmental structures to be able to analyze all the powers of the soul and to manifest it. So that's why at the beginning, even though the soul can speak, the soul understands everything and absorbs everything, but it can't articulate anything because the mind had not yet developed the structures for that kind of absorption that is conscious. It's all absorbing. Children, prior to them being able to speak, they absorb more than after they start to speak. We'd be surprised. Most people don't understand it. They think, these kids, he's just an infant. He's laying in his crib. So, let him just open up the TV and let him watch TV, or have the maid be there in front of him, talking on her phone with her boyfriend about anything. I don't know, anything you want. A baby is like a brand new piece of paper. It says every single mark on it is clear. An adult is like an old piece of paper that's been rubbed out many times. That's why the memory of a child is so clear, because there's nothing disturbing it. It's clear, it's very sharp. So the initial part, when that soul first comes into the body, it's pure. It has not been adulterated. It comes direct from Hashem. It's gone through this giant washing machine. If it's a reincarnation, it's pure. It doesn't want to come down here. Oh my God, he says, I got to go down there again. And all those challenges. I'm going to have to work so hard to overcome all of these desires and all of these seductions and all that which you put in front of my face. It's very difficult for a child. So God gives us a soul. And we have to know that even though our soul is something that we cannot articulate with properly, I make this joke and I say it so often, but still, often I'm sure one of you guys I've asked a question to one of you or two, or more than one, from time to time, is how's your soul? Did I ever ask you that question? Never asked you any question? Yeah, I've asked you that. Ask me, how's your soul? So when I started asking people that question like 50 years ago, I mean, they would think I'm asking about soul food, soul music, like I'm a hip guy, I get it with all these cultures. I said, no, your soul. What do you mean? I said, that thing that makes you alive. Oh, I don't know. I never. People don't even think about your soul. When's the last time you thought about your soul? We don't. And it's the main part of our being. It's like a person who worries about how his shirt looks, but never takes a shower. It's the soul that's so critical. And then you put the soul into the body in a combination. Why? Why do you mix these holy, pure factors? So the Rebbe says, and I'm going to read one paragraph to you. This is the Rebbe's preface to Tanya. And in the Tanya, I'm going to ask you each week to read one chapter. Even if you don't understand it well, read it. This Tanya that you have here is the easiest Tanya to read. It's the easiest one to understand. It's got a lot of good bits, so it's doable. Chapter 1, there's 53 chapters in this book. It'll take 1 year to do it. Some chapters longer, some chapters shorter. The language is very dense. Don't worry about that. You'll adjust to the language. Once you adjust to the language, your life, you'll start thinking about life differently. You'll start thinking about your behavior, not just as an act that I'm doing now that has zero consequence or immediate consequence. I'm going to make a living. I'm going to make profit. I'm not going to make profit. Everything you do is going to be part of a life factor that makes a life impression in a positive or negative way. All of a sudden, every part of life takes on purpose and meaning. And the purpose of this Tanya is as follows. This is the Lubavitcher Rebbe's original preface to the English Tanya. Chassidus in general, and Chabad Chassidus in particular, is an all-embracing world outlook. All-embracing world outlook, which means it gives us a healthy look at the world, at the social side of the world, at the economic side of the world, at the physical side of the world, at the health side of the world, at the interactive side of the world, at the family side, at all-embracing world outlook and way of life, a way of life critical. It's not just a story, which sees the Jews' central, you're going to find out why they hate us, which sees the Jews' central purpose. What's our central purpose? And the world was created for us, the Jew and the Torah. Of course, God created the whole world, and everything is important. But the Jew and the Torah are the catalyst that make the world work the way it should. So what's the Jew's central purpose? The unifying link between the Creator and creation. We are the bridge between God and this physical world. The Jew is a creature of heaven and a creature of earth. The heaven part of him is the divine soul. We have a piece of God in us. He breathed into our nostrils the breath of life. Everything in Genesis, it says, God said, and it was. God made. But here it says, and he breathed, he blew. When you blow, you share your essence. You can talk incessantly. You can do incessantly. But when you blow, you got to stop because you're blowing out your inners. God blew into our nostrils the breath of life. That's the heavenly divine soul, which is truly a part of godliness. Clothed in an earthly vessel, made out of dust, made out of earth, constituted of a physical body and animal soul. Instinct, whose purpose, man's purpose, who is a combination of both of those, is to realize the transcendency and unity of his nature and of the world in which he lives, within the absolute unity of God. That all of that is one. The physical and the spiritual is really one, different manifestations of oneness. And only the human has the capacity to enter into that extraordinary door of mystery. And the realization of this purpose entails a two-way correlation. One in direction from above, downward to earth. In other words, you have to bring down that holiness, connect with that divine. That's one way. It's a two-way street. The other from the earth upward. In fulfillment of the first, man draws holiness from the divine given Torah and commandments to permeate therewith every phase of his daily life and his environment. He's sharing this world. When we do a mitzvah, we affect our world. When we make a blessing over food, we don't do God a favor. We energize that food with an energy that is beyond the bandwidth of our physical measurement tools that gives us the special powers of who we are. His share in the world in fulfillment of the second. man draws upon all the resources at his disposal, both created and man-made, his wealth, his intelligence, his capacity, his desires, his leadership capacity, as vehicles for his personal ascendancy, and with him, that of the surrounding world. In other words, we are that bridge between God and man, in the world and the divine source. And we can fulfill both of them. How do we do that? We have to be, you might say, we are God's representatives. We have to be an example of how we do not fail and fall into the abyss of animal instinct living, which most people do. We have the ability for our minds to operate in such a way as it can control our emotions, control our behavior. And the critical factor is behavior. This evil that is permeated, I'm not sure if it's definitely epigenetic, because it's continuous, definitely epigenetic. But that learned behavior is something that is impossible to eradicate unless you have the mindset that has the capacity to do so. So let's start the Tanya. Tanya will teach you who you are, how you control yourself, how your brain can overcome the desires of your physical being, your structures, how you address evil when it's there, because we each have at moments of evil, moments of negativity. We know how to deal with it, and so forth. How to fulfill God's will properly, and to do it with joy and passion. Because if we don't do it with joy and passion, our kids are going to hate doing it. So that's number two. Number three, just to take 2 minutes, as I said, talk about something relevant. Everything's by divine providence. So we came out of the holiday period with the biggest whack of our collective history in terms of our experience. Nobody has been in the Holocaust. I'm the oldest in the room. I was born in 1946. So in terms of our collective history, this is our beyond 9/11. In 9/11, they flew into a building. They didn't know who they were killing. It was man to man, man to woman, man to baby. It was personal. It was individual. This was not killing people because they lived in the wrong place. This was killing people because you wanted to kill that person. It was killing people. You wanted to hurt that person. The more pain you inflicted, and the extraordinary creativity of these monsters of showing families how they're killing their own children on their phones. I mean, to do that goes beyond any pale, because when you're in a war, no soldier in the Holocaust, the guy didn't say, "Hey, take a picture, send it back to my mother," or send it to this guy's mother. This was another level. So we went from one extreme to the next, from Simchas Torah to boom, to existential survival. And by divine providence, it's the only month of the year that has no holidays. Only month of the year that has no holidays. Essentially, to tell you that the objective of the Jew is not always to party. Sometimes you have to face the harsh realities of a month that has no joy, no parties, but you've got to be the same Jew that you were on Yom Kippur, the same Jew that you were on Simchas Torah, and take that power that you got during that period of time and influence this kind of time as well, so that it transforms to be a time of positivity. On a practical level, I think this is happening at the right time, to study Torah each day, and to do it and keep in mind for our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land. Also, Mitzvah Hashem, as many people, we're doing a program. Joey's not here. I think he's probably at David's house. But we're doing it together with Federation. We're supplying Federation with 90,000 candles. October 27th, next Shabbat, we're going to have the entire day Miami. Every Jew is going to light a candle for a soldier in Israel. Every Jewish home. We're going to supply the candles. We're just talking about logistics, where to pick them up at synagogues. And this time I'm going to even put the candles in Reform synagogues or Reform temples. I don't care where they get it. The only place I'm not putting it is in churches. But otherwise, putting it there. And you have every single Jew. So everybody you talk to, nobody's going to say boo to you. Everybody you talk to during this week, until we have absolute victory, until the last soldier comes home. Like we don't say to pray for the rain, until the last Jew comes back home until the Euphrates River, so that the rain should not catch a single Jew discomforted, until the last Jew comes home. Every single person you talk to, whether you're doing a closing, a buying, a selling, a party, whatever you're doing, every person you talk to, say, by the way, can you just do one more thing for the soldiers in Israel, for some soldier in Israel? Can you put a mezuzah on your door? Can you light your Shabbos candles? Can you eat kosher maybe for a week? Can you stop eating pork for a while? No, don't eat shellfish. Come to shul once a week. Pray in the evening, say Shema. Talk to them about, find out, create yourself a repertoire of easy mitzvahs. I'm telling you, they will say thank you. They will say thank you to you. There was a big party yesterday, 2 days ago, and a friend of mine was having it there's this very uppity group of people. It's called Variety in Hollywood. All the stars and producers and financiers. So they had this event, and a friend of mine who was one of these very big billionaires in his house in Bel Air. 70 people come for dinner. They want to talk about, what's going on in Israel and so forth. And he was sharing with me some of the information. I said, so what's going to be the end of the story? So they'll walk away. Is this a fundraiser? He says, no, this is because these 70 people, we were all biggest supporters of the left-wing causes of, the LGBT causes, the gay causes, freedom causes, freedom. We've supported all that. He says, and they reneged against us. They weren't loyal to us. So we got to find some other means to support the. What's the purpose? I said, what's going to be the end of the story? To belong. So what do you suggest? He says, I'm going to ask them. I'm sure none of them read the Bible, the Torah. Most of them are Jewish. None of them read the Torah. I want to find out who they are. I said, how are they going to read the Torah? So I said, this was like at 5 o'clock Miami time. His event was 7 o'clock LA time. So I said, why don't you give each one a chumash, just like this chumash? He said, how are you going to get 70 chumash? Now I need this in 2 hours. I said, I'm going to get them for you. He says, you're going to get them? If you can get them, great. And he was out and delivered 70 chumash. He calls me after the meeting. He never screams, he never yells. He's like very, quiet, very thoughtful. He said, Rabbi, it was great. He says, all these guys, they took these books home. They're going to read the Torah for the first time in their life. Most of them didn't even know that Abraham was their grandfather. I'm just not joking. Do it. You are empowered. Don't chicken out. Make believe you're on the front lines. When they asked when my grandson, they had a day off because she was with our daughter. They didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, he gets a call. Be ready in 1 hour on this and this corner. Don't walk in the street. The car will pick you up. And he turns around to my daughter and her sisters. He says, I'm out of here. What are you going? He says, I was just called to duty. He says, when do you got to go? He said, now, how are you going to make it? He says, I better be there. That's what he said. Not being there is not an option. I got to be there. And he was there. You got to be there. You're on duty. You're not on duty in what they call the Shetach in Gaza, but you're on duty here in South Florida. See y'all next week.